Inside an isolated behavioral testing chamber, researchers can observe exactly what a living organism prioritizes when stripped of all outside variables. Place a rat in this box and offer it a choice. One lever delivers life-saving food, while the other delivers a mild electrical current, 0.5 milliamps at 50 Hz, directly to a specific region of the brain. The animal will ignore the food entirely. Instead, it will press the electrical stimulation lever up to 3,000 times an hour, locking itself into a frantic, continuous loop. It actively starves itself to death. The rat bypasses its biological need for calories merely to trigger localized electrical activity inside its own skull. This behavior shows that survival is not always the brain's highest directive. Given the option, the neural architecture prioritizes an artificial reward signal over biological necessity. For decades, researchers assumed the rat was simply chasing a high, cementing the popular idea that dopamine acts as the brain's pure pleasure center. But neuroscientist Roy Wise noted a discrepancy in the behavior. He proposed that dopamine does not actually encode the feeling of pleasure at all. This diagram illustrates how dopamine functions as a continuous learning signal, a mechanical engineer that dictates exactly what the brain should prioritize and pursue. If dopamine is a teacher rather than a reward, the starving animal is not experiencing joy. It is trapped in a hijacked feedback loop that is actively rewiring its behavior. Wolfram Schultz shifted the focus to primates, designing an apparatus to measure dopamine neuron activity in real time. Monkeys were trained to associate a simple event. The appearance of a visual cue on a screen meant that a drop of juice was about to be delivered. The expected biological hypothesis was straightforward. Dopamine firing rates should hit their maximum peak at the exact moment the sweet juice is tasted. This graph reveals a mathematical anomaly. From a 4 Hz baseline, activity spikes to 12 Hz when the cue appears, before any reward is delivered. When juice arrives, it drops back to baseline. But if withheld, activity plunges into a negative zone. Schultz defined this mechanism as prediction error. Dopamine calculates the mathematical difference between expected and actual outcomes, operating independently of the sensory experience. This mechanism translates directly to human behavioral models. Researchers measured dopamine proxies in subjects exposed to repeated visual sexual stimuli over controlled sessions. This bar chart compares the response over 2 weeks. Under high-frequency repeated exposure, the dopamine response amplitude plummets by nearly 40% from day 1 to day 14. As a behavioral consequence, the subjects require increasing novelty and variation simply to achieve their original baseline of engagement. The biological logic behind this decay is simple. The brain halts dopamine release once an outcome becomes completely predictable because there is no new information to learn. The human brain optimizes for prediction accuracy. This explains why stable, predictable stimuli lose their impact, while novel stimuli feel overwhelmingly compelling. In our ancestral past, this prediction error system had a clear utility. It forced early humans to explore, forage, and reproduce in environments where outcomes were highly uncertain. Contrast that ancient uncertainty with the modern environment, where these exact neural pathways are bombarded by artificially amplified, hyper-predictable signals. The primary symptom of this constant repetition is dopamine exhaustion, which weakens our natural behavioral drives. Because repetition destroys our baseline engagement, we enter a loop. We are forced into a pursuit of increasingly extreme or artificial novelty just to feel normal. This biological hijacking applies across our everyday lives, dictating everything from our relationship dynamics to our daily digital media consumption. We have to stop asking whether pleasure controls our actions. That question misreads brain chemistry entirely. Modern digital platforms are mathematically optimized to exploit the prediction error mechanism. They feed us just enough novelty to keep the learning signal active, without ever allowing for actual satisfaction. As these platforms train our learning signals through repeated exposure, the actions we take become less about conscious intent and more about the execution of these deeply encoded reward predictions.